Chapter 171. Check Yourself. The second more for monthly ticket, Queens. In Earl Hall's luxury villa, top-class Fei Nepot Shishan coffee wafts out a strong aroma, and the delicious taste of Queen's black tea meets into an intoxicating smell movement, which fills the air with elegant three-layer brackets and sets off a delicious and exquisite dessert. This is Audrey's afternoon tea. Her aristocratic friends in the occult came by invitation, sitting around, laughing and talking. After Audrey's quiet guidance, Jane, Murray and others have a strong interest in the Black Emperor that appeared last night, and they have turned their attention to Constance Learson, a noble son who joined MI9. Does the Black Emperor have extraordinary abilities? The sweet-looking Christine asked curiously. The fathers of several of them are at least Viscount, which gives them enough status and channels to know about the existence of extraordinary power and potions, but they are all unwilling to join the Night Watchman, the Penalty Taker, the Mechanical Heart, and MI9, just like Audrey at the beginning, and are unwilling to waste a lot of time on performing official duties. In addition, the families they belong to cannot be traced back to thousands of years ago. Even the ancient aristocrats who were founded by Ruan Wang Guigang in the Quaternary were not completely loyal to the royal family or became military high-level, so they did not get the gift of formula. Even if they had special materials, they might not recognize them, and they did not know how to use them. That this limits the possibility of Murray, Christine, and others becoming extraordinary people, so that they can only aspire to it, but it is difficult to take that crucial step. As for whether their elders have privately collected potions and cultivated several extraordinary people who belong to the family, it is not something they can understand. After all, this is not allowed. If the king really holds the handle, he can completely deprive him of his title on this ground. Of course, at this moment, there are already two traitors in the living room, namely Audrey, who has been promoted to Mind Reader in Sequence 8, and Viscount Glint, who has collected an extraordinary material and will soon become a pharmacist. Tall young gentleman. Constance took a sip of coffee. I don't do a positive answer. I just tell you some facts. In addition to traces of gas explosion in the restaurant where the fighting took place, elements such as toxins, body double, screaming spirits, and bullets condensed by divine power were also detected through various methods. By the way, the Black Emperor, no, the Grand Theft Auto, was in a ghost state. It's not like the one who killed Chi Lin Gus, the Lieutenant General Hurricane, or the one who solved Lanowis in the sewer, who stole the Black Emperor card and created the capping case, is the third follower of Mr. Fool. Backlander alone has at least 3 dependents. How many dependents will he have? Audrey Heart Movement, deliberately ignorant, asked. There was a fierce, extraordinary battle there? Murray, under her guidance, further asked. Capping Home have special person? A more powerful extraordinary person? Even more than one? He is just a trafficker? Viscount Glint unconsciously expressed doubts. Audrey kept a shallow smile and curious eyes, waiting patiently for Constance to answer. Constance smiled a track. Murray's guess is correct. I can only say so much. Do you want me to be grounded by the team leader? Cappen's family has more powerful extraordinary people, more than one. Sure enough, he is not an ordinary human trafficker. He may be involved in many mysterious events. Trafficking in human beings, does he involve cult sacrifice? Is this what Mr. Fool's followers are aiming at? Lena Yuzi, that is similar, involving cults, involving sacrifices, involving the arrival of the true creator. I don't know which cult is behind Cappen. Mr. Fool's goal seems to have been aimed at the ball. It was a game between gods? He doesn't know how many great things have been destroyed by those evil spirits. Audrey once associated a lot, and the emotions surge gradually. The enemy of our tarot club is an evil god. Nothing else is qualified. Does Mr. Fool want to get the title of evil nemesis? Audrey pursed her lips and gave a chuckle in her mind. Soon, she put away her emotions and secretly confessed. Audrey, how could you? How can you make fun of Mr. Fool? At noon, Klein returned to Minsk Street. Not surprisingly, he found a letter sent by the old Kohler, who paid a driver in his own letterbox. This is their agreed emergency contact method, of course. According to Klein's expectation, the old Kohler, who doesn't know the words, will only tell himself when and where to meet through simple symbols. Who knows, after the stationery is spread out, it is actually neat words that after a glance, Klein confirmed that it was consistent with the handwriting in Daisy's word book. It seems that this girl helped Kohler write this paper. This paper was not soaked by moisture. Perhaps Kohler bought some specially for emergency contact. Klein opened the door, walked into the living room and read letters. He didn't take off his coat, but took off his hat and leaned on his cane. This is because the fireplace in the room has not yet been lit, and the cold in early November is quietly drilling into the bones. The content of that letter is very simple. After all, Daisy doesn't know many words. First, she thanked the detective for his kindness, then told Klein that he had returned home safely, and finally made a euphemism, hoping that the detective would bring the word book with him next time he came to the East District. A polite girl? Klein chuckled, snapped her fingers, and burned the stationery without leaving any clues. He decided to go to the East District again tomorrow, return the word book to Daisy, and reimburse the old Kohler for his mail delivery and paper and pen expenses. Thought of here, he could not help but sigh, say with smile. Captain, now it's my turn to reimburse others. There was only the last finishing work left. So Klein suddenly got free. He didn't waste time, went out again, and went directly to the Crag Club Dr. Alan often appeared there on Friday afternoons, and Klein wanted to ask about the Tarot Kid while set into the Crag Club in Hillston District, Klein to meet the red vest waiter way. A cup of marquee black tea and a dessert will be delivered to the corner of the hall where Dr. Allen and reporter Mike are sitting. Klein has seen Alan Chris, a well-known cold surgeon with gold-rimmed glasses, Mike Joseph, a reporter from the Daily Observer who has worked with him twice and has charming blue eyes, and Talum Dumont, an aristocratic equestrian teacher who appears in the club only after Shylock Moriarty. Oh, here comes our detective, just talking about you. Talum got up with a smile. Speak ill of me? Klein made a joke. Mike followed up, stretched out his hand and shook his hand. No, I want to hire you again. What's the matter? Klein saluted Dr. Allen and sat down at their table. Mike haha laughs. You should read the newspaper. Capin was killed by the Grand Theft Auto, Black Emperor, and his sins were exposed. This is really a happy thing. As a reporter, I must have enough news acumen. I intend to get a list from the police department, interview the rescued girls in the East District, and then truly restore the most ferocious, cruel, and unforgivable side of Capin to newspaper readers. Of course, those victims must be anonymous. He paused, low voice way. I also have a hidden purpose or idea to find out whether those girls and their families have any special friends through such interviews. Maybe that is the Black Emperor of Grand Theft Auto. You have found the right person? Klein almost twitched his mouth. He smiled at Mike Way. We have cooperated on the East District and have enough familiarity and trust. I have no reason to refuse. Happy cooperation. Mike stretched out his hand and said, We will start tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, and the reward will be the same as last time, totaling £10. At this time, has been an Allen. Doctor said, Sherlock, I want to hire you, too, just this evening or after dinner. I'm bullish recently. Klein funny asked, Will it conflict with Mike's entrustment? No. Allen shook his head. I've been lucky recently, which makes me more suspicious that the bad luck before was because of the child's reverse Wheel of Destiny card and his words. I'm puzzled about this. I can say that I am very good to him and have great kindness. Why did he do this to me? I want to visit him at his house to make sure that he didn't mean it. However, I am always afraid of similar things, afraid of any accidents, so I want you to protect me, just tonight, and I won't conflict with Mike's entrustment.
How about that?
This is exactly what I want to do. It's impossible to challenge. After doing good deeds, my character has become very good. Is it really the King of Yellow and Black who is in charge of good luck? Klein, a surprise, reserved laughed. No problem. We can talk about remuneration. Silver City. Derek Berg once again examined the translucent bug with 12 rings, and examined the legacy of Amon's 2 places at once. He originally wanted to ask Mr. Fool what it was, but considering that he had already troubled the deity once and gave up his scheduled plan with a thin face, he was ready to come out and ask Mr. Hanging Upside Down and Miss Justice at the next tarot party and hide the bug. Derek suddenly thought of one thing: follow the shepherd Lovia elders too. Explore the half-destroyed team of the fallen creator temple. It's almost time to come back. It's not too far from Silver City, and it belongs to the direction that has not been involved before. He decided to have a look, and there were many acquaintances in it. P.S. The second one is to ask for a monthly ticket. Chapter 172, A Story About Love. A third more for a monthly ticket. Looking at the dark sky lit by lightning, Derek didn't directly knock on the doors of several acquaintances, but walked along the widest avenue to the training ground on the edge of Silver City. After each exploration team comes back, it will stay here for a period of time, which is not only convenient for them to communicate and report things they meet in the depths of darkness, but also equivalent to disguised isolation, to guard against some strange things attached to which member. And so on. This is the experience that Baiyin City has explored and summarized for more than 2,000 years. It is not complicated, but it is quite useful. Just entering the training ground, Derek Berg, with a hurricane axe in his back, saw Huaran, an elder who seemed to be only in his 30s, and two acquaintances of the same age. Baiyin City is only that big, limited by the environment, and the population has never increased. People of one age say little, say much, and there is not much. Derek dare not say that he knows all of them, but he has seen most of them, and some of them have been in general education classes for several years, plus training companions. In this exploration team, Derek is most familiar with Duck Regents, who was once a teammate of the patrol team with him. This boy named Dake is of medium height, slightly fat, good at strength, optimistic and cheerful, and often has a close smile on his face. At present, he is the 8th gladiator of the giant approach. At this moment, the two sides are separated by a translucent but hard wall like steel, so they can't make effective contact. They must wait for all the members of the exploration team to confirm that there is no problem before they can meet directly. Derek, who has become silent and withdrawn since his parents died, waved and greeted Duck. The gladiator noticed something and looked over. Duck. How? Didn't meet any danger? Derek gave a cry. The material used in that black wall is not far from Baiyin City, and it is called dark amber. It is as hard as steel and has certain transparency and good sound conductivity. Derek's words get through without any obstacles. When I want to come to Derek, Duck will definitely show a bright smile and habitually wave his arms. You see that I am not hurt. You should know that we have not encountered anything too dangerous. It is just a small problem. Hearing his voice, Duck took a few steps, close to the wall, and replied with a smile. No, it's always going well. Looking at his faultless smile, Derek suddenly became cold all over, just like sleeping in an abandoned tower or a ruined city at night, surrounded by darkness and undercurrent savings. Crag Club, Klein and Dr. Allen reached an agreement on remuneration. £2. Have to say, the doctor's money is easy to earn. In my past, such a commission, at most, paid 10 Sul. Klein, who had the heart to take this task, sighed in his mind. He remembers that when he was on the night watchman squad, he heard Fry, the corpse collector, mention that the income of famous doctors was very high at that time. Leonard Mitchell, a poet unlike a poet, responded that, as far as he knew, if he bought a house as a shop in the prosperous area of Backlander, the fastest way to get back to his roots was to transform it into a clinic. The two sides agreed to visit Will and Seton's house after dinner, but it was just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so the equestrian teacher Talim greeted the three of them, made a table, and played an upgrade, the kind invented by Roselle the Great. What I expected was to play tennis, practice shooting, and look through books in the library. What a healthy life. But why did it become like this? The intermission of playing cards. Klein thought that, frankly speaking, with his current magic accomplishments, Dr. Allen, Reporter Mike, and Talim can completely lose all the money they have with them. But I am an honest man, and I trust my skill and luck more. Klein picked up the cream shortcake and took a bite while the waiter in the red vest shuffled the cards. He sincerely praised. This is life. In the process of playing cards, Klein noticed one thing. That is, the equestrian teacher Talim was no longer in a daze and full of troubles as before. His friend fell in love with someone he shouldn't have loved. Klein took a sip of Marquis black tea and thought curiously. As a detective, he knew that this matter should not be asked in front of others. So he held back and concentrated on playing cards at 5 o'clock because Mike Joseph had to go back to the newspaper. The game of 4 people was suspended, and Klein won 5 souls. Luck is really good recently. Klein gratified admiration. See, Alan Doctor left the table to the bathroom, then control the voice. Low say with smile. Talim, is your friend's business settled? Talim is throwing his cards into the middle of the table. When he hears this, he feels dazed and sighs and laughs, sort of. He has a desire to communicate and added, in fact, it's not too serious, but I was thinking too much. To put it simply, a distinguished young gentleman fell in love with a civilian woman. You know, a man of similar status must marry a noble lady. Oh, for him, even the daughter of a rich man can't. Well, thanks to my brain, I made up a lot of dog blood and bizarre stories, such as falling in love with men, monsters, and objects that are not allowed by ethical relations. Klein was disappointed and funny and said, as far as I know, upper-class men don't mind keeping a mistress outside. No, Shylock, you don't understand love, do you understand? Love. That young gentleman just wants to marry that commoner. Talim sighed. Yes, I don't understand. I'm just a single dog. Klein opened his mouth and was speechless. Tully selfish sigh away. For the sake of that young gentleman's future, I once thought of asking you to find someone with some magical ability. Secretly, in short, I am a law-abiding person and will only think about it in my head. How did things work out later? Klein asked with interest. Talamu took the plateau coffee and took a sip. The solution is simpler than I thought. I found the lady directly and told her the dilemma. She rationally expressed her willingness to leave the gentleman and asked me for help. I have to say that she is really a considerate, kind, gentle, and beautiful girl. If I don't consider my identity, maybe I will kneel in front of her and kiss the back of her hand. Well, it seems that I can't help. Klein picked up the white glazed porcelain cup with gold thread for black tea. As an Earth visitor, he is completely uninterested in beating mandarin ducks and ruining others' love. However, when listening to gossip is another matter. After dinner at Crag Club and a limited supply of Sunia lobster, Klein and Dr. Allen took the latter's carriage to Alan Seton's house at 66 Dalton Street, North District. This is the address that Dr. Allen remembered long ago. He didn't go back to the hospital to read the corresponding medical records. According to Klein's guess, most of the information about Will Anstine has been taken away by the night watchman, but as a night watchman, I know their working process very well. Klein sighed with a wry smile. Ring the doorbell. 2 people wait for a while to see the door was opened. Wearing a black and white dress, maid asked doubtfully. Gentlemen, who are you looking for? See Allen, or the usual cold appearance, Klein active said. We're looking for Will Seton, his attending physician, to make a return visit and confirm his health. I don't know him. I've only been here for a few days. I'll get my master. Wait a minute. The maid answered blankly. 2 people waiting, Allen suddenly said. I almost believe the reason you just found. This is the basic accomplishment of being a detective. Klein gave a chuckle at this moment. An old gentleman in his 50s walked to the door and said with a heavy voice, Will Ansit's family has moved away and he signed up for a date. Allen, just a calculation, just frowned. Just 2 days after the operation. How can you be tired of moving? He really acted like he was visiting. Klein is slightly confused and asked, Sir, how do you know so clearly? Normally, subsequent tenants will definitely move in once in a while. The old gentleman replied grumpily. Someone has asked before, and I went to the landlord specially. The night watchman? Klein asked hopelessly. Do you know where Will Seton's family moved? No. The old man only spit out one word. Did they leave anything here? Klein considered for a moment and continued to ask questions. There are some. The old gentleman took a deep breath and said, But it was all given to the previous gang. It's really a helpless thing to meet colleagues. They can always think of what you will think of in advance. Klein can't help sighing. See, follow-up has no clue. Klein and Allen politely left the Dalton Street, 66. It seems that your doubts will take a long time to solve. Klein sighed head to Allen. Doctor said. Allen was silent for a few seconds, slowly spit out a sigh. After what happened just now, I'm not so troubled. I'm a doctor. It's enough to do my own thing. I should pay a return visit to my health, instead of asking questions about the situation, what other people think, and why they are not kind. It's not something I should pay attention to. Just try to maintain the relationship between doctors and patients in the future. It's great that you can think so. Klein echoed it from the bottom of his heart, and then casually asked, what happened to Willem Setten's left leg at that time? His left calf has a strange tumor, which happens to form a ring, which seriously oppresses the blood vessels. Dr. Allen recalled, but the child didn't look too painful, just a little scared. We initially wanted to treat conservatively, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. P.S. The third watch is completed, and the monthly ticket, the promised overtime, is all completed. End of this chapter. Chapter 173, A Nightmare, a monthly ticket, the City of Silver. Derek Berg doesn't know how he got home, but he remembers the unspeakable fear compared with the past. Duck Regent's personality and performance are not much different, but it does have disturbing changes. Derek is afraid that Silver City will be targeted by the evil god Fallen Creator, and that he has not become the sun, saving Silver City from the curse of more than 2,000 years and giving hope and sunshine to the residents here, and it has been completely destroyed. At this moment, he especially hates that he is not strong enough, and there is only Sequence 8. No. You can't just watch. Derek Horan stood up, ready to rush to the round tower, and told the other elders of the 6-member deliberation group and the chief, Colin Iliad, about the abnormality he found. But Derek is very clear that similar anomalies are not suspicious at all. Every time we explore the depths of darkness, there must be a high-tension state for several days, more than 10 days, or even more than a month, which is really a monster that may be encountered at any time and placed at. In addition, the desolate and hopeless journey will bring extreme depression. In addition, for the sake of safety, the members of the exploration team are not allowed to vent sexually when they go out, which makes them undergo a certain remodeling in their hearts every time they explore. If there is a great danger that more than half of the team members are killed or injured, it is not too rare for the rest of them to change their personalities. The treatment of such people is only isolation and treatment according to the usual practice. With few exceptions, Bayin City has the first 3 sequences of the Dragon Approach, so there is no shortage of psychoanalysts. Derek rushed to the door and suddenly slowed down. He knew that such a report to the 6-member deliberation group would probably have no effect, and there would be no small chance of arousing suspicion, and even the danger of being targeted by the shepherd Elder Loyat wandering for more than 10 seconds. Derek bit his teeth and slipped out. He thinks he must remind the elders of the 6-member deliberation group, even if it will bear a lot of risks. For the vast majority of residents in Bayin City, maintaining the existence of this city and maintaining the continuation of this civilization with sacrifice is a belief that has been engraved into the bone marrow. After hearing it, selfish people often don't live long in such an internal and external environment. Derek, of course, is not completely reckless. Under the example of all members of the Tarot Club, especially the Upside Down, he clearly understands that at some times he should know how to be patient, properly protect himself, and not make useless and unnecessary sacrifices. This is to better guard the Silver City, that I'm just saying that there should be no danger from what I have observed. Derek comforted himself and ran more and more urgently. Finally, he saw the round tower symbolizing the supreme power of Silver City. He found the extraordinary person who was on duty here and made a request to meet the chief. To Derek's surprise, the extraordinary man didn't ask why as usual. After a simple communication, he took him up the stairs and arrived at the room belonging to the chief. It's strange. It's not the same as before. Derek felt that the change of this detail made him more uneasy. Entering the room, he saw Colin Iliad, the chief, standing in front of a wall. This tall old man with deep decrees, blue eyes and messy white hair, with his back to 2 straight swords hanging on the wall, and wearing his usual linen shirt and brown coat, is hard to believe that he is a strong man who has hunted many demons and monsters. Derek Berg, what do you have to tell me face to face? Colin asked in a mellow voice. Your Excellency. Derek saluted. I met the team exploring the temple at the training ground today. I found that the Duckrogen I know has changed strangely. He is no longer as cheerful as before, and his smile is as polite as a stranger. Besides, Elder Lovia doesn't always change his state of speaking. Cullen gave Derek a deep look and asked in a low voice, "Just these two things?" "Yes, yes." Derek lowered his head. "I think there may be something unusual." Cullen waved and said, "I see. I'll ask Avro to do the inspection. Go home and report this kind of thing directly to the Guardian of the Round Tower in the future. Avalo is the most senior psychoanalyst in Bayin City who is closest to Sequence 6. Unfortunately, there is no potions formula after Sequence 7. Gets such a reply. Derek, depressed, left. Cullen watched his back disappear by the door and suddenly let out a sigh of disappointment. After talking with Dr. Allen about Will and Seton for a while, Klein, who didn't find anything extra, got off the carriage halfway, took the steam subway, arrived near Minsk Street after 3 stops, and changed to a trolley bus to go home. Because it was still early, he used divination to confirm that the previous tenant had not lied, and then he continued to study the secret book diligently. Since this mysterious book, which can be called From Introduction to Mastery, Klein has made more and more clever use of the mysterious space above the fog and completed many excellent operations. What limits me now is my own sequence, my own strength and spirituality. Late at night, Klein hid the secret book and went to the bathroom to clean himself up and get ready for bed. That night, he slept soundly. Even if the church bell rang on the hour in the morning, it just turned him over. Winter is suitable for staying under the covers. Klein muttered to get up. In order to treat the Black Emperor, he added a boiled egg with sugar and strawberry jam specially bought for white bread for breakfast. Just as he was enjoying his food leisurely, the doorbell suddenly rang. "Didn't I tell Mike to stay after breakfast?" Klein muttered, took a sip of sweet soup, and wiped his mouth with a napkin. According to his agreement with reporter Mike, the other party will arrive half an hour after breakfast to start an interview with the rescued East Side girls. If Mike doesn't show up for more than half an hour, it means that things will be delayed by 1 day. Klein walked to the door, and before reaching out, his mind naturally outlined the visitor outside the door. He was not a reporter Mike Joseph, but a Dr. Alan Chris. "Good morning, Alan. Did you sleep late last night?" Klein found that Alan's face was rather poor, so he quietly opened Second Sight and took a look. Alan took off his hat and put away his cane. He was going to take off his coat, but he was discouraged by the cold air in the room. Klein too quick track. "I'm going out today. You know, Mike may come to see me, so I didn't make a fireplace." Alan nodded, didn't say much, followed Klein all the way into the living room, found a place to sit down, just said, "Sherlock, I had a nightmare last night. I dreamed about that child. Will and Seton." "A nightmare?" "This is within my knowledge. I am a professional in dream interpretation, more professional than reasoning." Klein leaned forward and shook hands. "What kind of nightmare?" Alan recalled and said, "I can't remember some details and processes. What impressed me the most was a dark and towering minaret with a silvery snake on it. It was crawling slowly and looked at me with cold and heartless red eyes. I don't know why. I went into the steeple, went up and down the stairs, passed through one wall after another, and passed through one locked door after another. Finally, I found the child named Will and Seton in a dark corner. He jumped a few steps on one leg and curled up against the wall, with the tarot cards sprinkled around him. Seeing that it was me, he was scared and happy and shouted, 'Dr. Allen.' The whole dream was almost like this, and then I woke up." Klein listened carefully and asked thoughtfully, "Didn't Will and Seton say anything else?" Alan frowned thought for a moment, suddenly blurted out, "Yes," he said, "Dr. Allen, a snake wants to eat me." Then the silvery serpent hung upside down from the ceiling, with its head facing me. It has a big mouth, but there are no teeth, no tongue, and it is red. The silvery serpent. The dark tower. Will and Seton under layers of defense. Klein considered the Dr. Allen's way. This is not a strange dream. It should be that when you communicate with Will and Seton, you unconsciously realize that he is in some kind of predicament and threatened by something. Therefore, you will dream of similar scenes. Children hiding in the depths of the tower, hiding behind countless walls and gates, and silvery snakes coiled at the top of the tower. Haha, as a detective, more or less to understand a little psychology, the newspaper also often have an introduction. What puzzles me is why you didn't have such a dream until today. Klein didn't lie in his interpretation, but didn't tell the possible real reason. Alan Zhang mouthway. I was so anxious just now that I forgot one thing, he said, and took out a leather wallet and took out a good handmade paper crane from the inside. After discovering that Will-Setten's family had moved away, I remembered that he gave me this thing before leaving the hospital and said, "Doctor, this can bring you good luck." I didn't care at that time, so I threw it in the drawer of the office. After I left you last night, I took it back and put it in my wallet. As a result, I had the nightmare at night. Klein looked at Paper Crane, thoughtfully nods. Dr. Allen, it seems that Will-Setten didn't mean to make you unlucky. He made amends afterwards. The paper crane invented by Emperor Russell itself meant to give good wishes, and he also said it would bring you good luck. Allen subconsciously asks, paper crane folding was invented by Roselle the Great? I don't know if it's him, but I think it should be him. Klein upturned corners of the mouth. Probably. P.S. On the last day of September, ask for a monthly ticket and hashtag X767E and hashtag X5EA6 and hashtag X641C and hashtag X7D22 and hashtag X3010 and hashtag X4E91 and hashtag X6765 and hashtag X9601 and hashtag X3011 and hashtag X5C0F and hashtag X8VF4 and hashtag X7F51 and hashtag X789 and hashtag XFF0C and hashtag X8VA9 and hashtag X4F60 and hashtag X4F53 and hashtag X9A8C and hashtag X66F4 and hashtag X65B0 and hashtag X6700 and hashtag X65B0 and hashtag X6700 and hashtag X5Feb and hashtag X7684 and hashtag X7AE0 and hashtag X8282 and hashtag X5C0F and hashtag X8BF4 and hashtag XFF0C and hashtag X6240 and hashtag X6709 and hashtag X5C0F and hashtag X8BF4 and hashtag X7092 and hashtag X66F4 and hashtag X65B0 and hashtag X3002, Chapter 174 The Special Spirit World, a monthly ticket. Under Klein's explanation and relief, Allen was relieved and prepared to observe for a few more days to see if he would have similar nightmares. After the famous surgeon was sent out of the door with a smile, Klein's expression suddenly became heavy and seemed to be thinking about something. There is no problem in his interpretation of the dream just now. The dark tower, the heavily blocked walls and gates, and the silvery white serpent really symbolize the situation that Will-Setten is threatened by something, and symbolize the child's mentality of being afraid and helpless and trying to hide behind layers of protection. But the crux of the matter is that this high probability is not the enlightenment of Dr. Allen's spiritual autonomy. Otherwise, he could not wait until last night, when he dug out the paper crane, to have such a dream. As early as before Will-Setten was discharged from the hospital, as early as when he noticed something strange in his spiritual unconscious, there should be a similar development. Therefore, Klein suspects that this dream was instilled in Dr. Allen by others, and the medium is that paper crane. Klein opened Second Sight and carefully observed this handicraft, but didn't find any spiritual brilliance. However, his inspiration and intuition all told him that there was something wonderful about that paper crane, which might involve the most nihilistic, difficult-to-grasp, and awesome fate. That kid named Will-Setten is not simple. It seems that the magic is probably not the deck of tarot cards, but himself. The silver snake is a symbol of danger, which is related to bad luck, and other factors. Does it represent the Mercury snake, the sequence one of the monster approach, and the Mercury snake? Klein's thoughts spread out, but he was not sure of anything. He turned to analyze how dreams are instilled. With Klein's current occult attainments, this is not something too complicated and difficult to understand. He soon had a train of thought. First of all, We can rule out the influence of ghosts, which will make Dr. Allen's aura color dyed with light or deep black and green, and I just didn't find any signs of this. There are roughly 2 ways to inculcate the dream owner with no abnormal situation. One is the extraordinary ability similar to nightmare, like the captain, and he can't get involved too deeply, otherwise it will also leave traces, and the other is more ingenious and higher end. The principle of dreams is that spirit travels in the spirit world, so that some details unconsciously noticed at ordinary times can be transformed into symbolic revelations under external stimulation, or directly get some revelations related to himself from the outside, and then tell them to the mental body and the spiritual body itself. And because the owner is in a state of sleep, it will appear in the form of dreams. So the second way is to instill through the spiritual world. First, use some magical means to create the revelation that you need, and then naturally let the target's spirit body get it when traveling in the spirit world, and feed it back. In that case, the target can dream the scene that others want him to dream, and there will be no trace outside. This is something that I can't do at present, even if it is a spiritual state that can slightly incite some power above the fog. Klein paused and added a possible guess. Dr. Allen was hinted by Paper Crane, and once he found it, he would have a corresponding dream. This is easy to confirm. As long as I use telepathy on Dr. Allen, I should be able to find the corresponding traces. However, will it be unfriendly to use telepathy on him? Or borrow that nightmare candle from Father Travsky? No. It was the vampire, Emlyn White, an avid doll lover, who recognized my identity, not muscular, like Father Travsky of the Giant. Klein withdrew his thoughts and considered what to do next. He decided to wait for the fog to predict the danger. If it is acceptable, he will sneak into Dr. Allen's house tonight and use the dream spell and other means to secretly observe whether the source of the dream is direct guidance or indirect forgery. However, with Klein's strength and level, it is quite difficult to find traces of the latter, and he doesn't have much confidence himself. This is not to say that sitting next to Dr. Allen and meditating, spirit's body can roam the same spiritual world with him, which must be positioned enough to do that. According to the description in the Book of Secrets, the existence of the spiritual world is quite wonderful. It completely overlaps with the real world, so everyone can get inspiration from the spiritual world at any time. However, the spiritual world is not divided into upper, lower, left, and right, and the past, future, and present may meet here, just like the strange ocean formed by the compression of countless knowledge and information, which is completely different from the world, in normal concept and logic. Because of this, the enlightenment from the spiritual world can only be various symbols, not direct answers. Because of this, which part of spirit's experience in the spiritual world is not only related to his own place and time, but also closely related to the current state of body and spirit. Without a corresponding positioning method, it is impossible to lock in the spiritual world and find someone's spirit body, even if you are beside each other. Because of this, spirit's wandering in the spiritual world is also limited, and he dare not go too far. Once he is lost and can't return to his body, his master will become a dementia or even a vegetable. It is even more difficult to enter the spiritual world and use it as a springboard to complete the transmission. If you are not careful, you will get lost and never return to the real world until you rot and die at call. Klein spit out a sigh and put the problem behind him for the time being. He took out his pocket watch and looked at the time. He found that he had been thinking for too long, and his breakfast was cold. But reporter Mike hasn't come yet, which shows that the entrustment will be delayed by 1 day. In the spirit of not wasting, Klein ate the rest of the food, then went to the fog to do divination, and was surprised to get the revelation that it was not dangerous at all. After all this, the appointed time has passed. Without hesitation, he put on a heavy jacket, put on a cap, took the word book and left number 15 Minsk Street. His original plan was to accompany Mike Joseph to the East District for an interview and find an opportunity to give old Kohler some hints so that he wouldn't mention that he had promised to help Liv find his daughter. As for the Liv family, the old Kohler will remind them. Now, Mike has put things off for a day, and Klein is more calm and no longer worried about mistakes and accidents. Combined with the address mentioned by old Kohler, Klein entered the depths of the East District according to the inspiration obtained by divination, and found the room on the third floor under the watchful, or alert eyes, or numb or greedy eyes. There are 2 high and low beds here, and there are some worn-out mattresses on the ground. Every spare place is full of sundries. Klein looked directly at the bottom bunk of the innermost bunk bed and cried, "Old Kohler." Brush the floor. The old Kohler rolled up and leaned to the door in surprise. "You did come. After I sent you that letter yesterday, I guessed that you would come to see me today, so I didn't go to the dock and waited at home." "Well, I don't need to think about how to make up lies to explain why I came here directly to find you." Klein looked around and said instead, "Old Kohler, with your current income, you can rent a better room and change to a better place. Why did you just change from a bunk bed to a bunk bed? Most of the money is to help you collect information." Old Kohler smiled. "Besides, I'm no longer young. I have to save some money for my future physical weakness." Klein was silent for 2 seconds. "You can consider buying some insurance, such as the Lonely Old Man Rescue Insurance, which will enable you to get at least enough money to fill your stomach and sleep in your room every week after you get really old." The insurance industry in this world sprouted in the Quaternary, and now it is relatively mature with the promotion of Roselle the Great, mainly including various insurances related to maritime trade, fire insurance, injury insurance, pension insurance in different names, etc., and the whole is more concentrated on the rich and middle class. I know that. When I was a worker, I paid the insurance premium of 3p every week, but later I lost my income. Old Kohler sighed that his biggest problem now is that his income is unstable. "I don't know when the informant fee from Mr. Detective will be interrupted." Klein can't promise anything, pointed to the outside way. "Let's go to Liv's house and return the word book to the girl." Out of the room, Klein casually mentioned one. "It's really funny. The day before yesterday, I said I would volunteer to help find Daisy. As a result, she was sent back by the police yesterday. Don't mention this matter in the future. I don't want to be laughed at." "Okay." Old Kohler agreed first, and then said, "Your kindness and kindness will not be laughed at." Through the dirty streets, the 2 men came to Liv's house. Klein saw that the girl who had just been rescued had started ironing her clothes at any time, and saw that the clothes hanging here were hanging down one by one, dripping with water, just like before, and didn't know what to say at the moment. "Daisy." After a while, he began to shout, "Your word book." Daisy's eyes lit up, but it was inconvenient to leave. After a busy time, she stopped working and came to the door, constantly saying, "Thank you." Liv and Freya also put down their work and came to express their thanks. Klein just repeated what he had just said to Old Kohler. After getting a positive answer, he took out the £2 change he had prepared and handed it to Liv. "A reporter will interview Daisy tomorrow. This is his reward in advance, but don't mention it in front of him, or a lot of things will be difficult to handle. He may give some more tomorrow, but not so much." "Well, no. I'm willing to expose the bad guy's evil deeds without money." Daisy shook her head suddenly. Klein smiled. "This is a rule. You can't break the rule, understand?" He turned to look at Liv Wei. "Take it, your idea is right. Only when Daisy and Freya know more words and learn more things can you get rid of the present situation." He was going to say a lot of things, and he wanted to suggest that Liv's family move to the edge of the East Zone. Anyway, customers who can afford laundry will not live in the East Zone, but in the end, he didn't mention anything. He had intended to give more help to the other party, but he still restrained his behavior. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people like Liv's family in the East District. Simple individuals want to help them, even big bankers, and they can't arouse any splash. This is just the East District with the whole of Backlander and the Kingdom of Ruin on it. "Thank you. Thank the reporter for me." Liv was silent for a while and accepted the money. Klein didn't stay long, but left in a hurry. "It seems that there is a ghost hiding here, which will devour his mind. Go outside with Old Kohler." He looked back, suddenly spit out a sigh, and whispered, "There has never been a savior. P.S. Monthly ticket for the last few hours, by the way. There is overtime in the early morning, and overtime on October 1 St. HTTPS. Genius remembers the address of this website for 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 175 Explore Dreams. The first more guaranteed monthly ticket. What? Old Kohler didn't hear clearly and asked one declined visual ahead some bumpy road, self-deprecating Nothing. I hope Liv's family can get rid of their present situation and live better and better. He was really impressed just now. As the successor of the new era of the big food empire, it is a normal instinctive reaction to think of revolution, mobilize the masses, and change the world. But if you think about it carefully and analyze the specific problems, he thinks that the poor alone can't save themselves because there are extraordinary powers in this world, and some of them are quite strange, which can't be solved by guns, just like the sequence 5 of heterogeneous ways. Hating the soul, this is on the one hand, and on the other hand, limited by the law of conservation of extraordinary characteristics, limited by the acquisition of materials, extraordinary power cannot be popularized, and it is difficult to transform the advantage of numbers into effective combat power. Even if it can be popularized, as long as the problem of out of control is not solved, it will also bring disaster. If there is no high-order strongman, all these can be solved to a certain extent. However, in the real world, there are not only demigods and demigods, but also various seals that make people die without knowing how to die. Moreover, the gods are really real and high above them. In this way, it will not be a big problem for the poor to fight by means of strikes and demonstrations, but once they take up arms and build an army, they will inevitably encounter an irresistible counterattack, and it is not impossible for large-scale psychological hints of natural disasters to appear. However, many secret organizations can compete with the official extraordinary institutions, often with their own evil attributes, and death may not be the most tragic ending. Therefore, the most promising way to succeed in taking the road of revolution is to win the support of one or several churches. How many concessions can the vested interests make only by strikes and demonstrations? It will be much easier to buy off. But the last time the real creator almost came to Backlander with the help of the miserable situation of the poor people, it seemed that the goddess church and the informed nobles had some touches, which can be seen from the investigation task accepted by Mike Reporter and the feedback from Miss Justice. Klein was thinking about the East District, the Docklands, and the factory area aimlessly. In the end, he couldn't help but hey, in the heart's eyes. Wanna go, or with the help of the threat of Ball arrival, most likely for the poor to improve the situation. But Ball is the most eager to absorb their flesh and blood and devour their souls, which is most likely to bring disasters that no one can escape. This is really a wonderful irony. Queens, in Earl Hall's luxury villa, because Drive Eastland had something else to do later. Audrey started her second psychology class this week ahead of schedule. Susie was more excited than she was, and rushed into the study early, leaving aside her usual ball games. In this class, Audrey deliberately showed her curiosity, and from time to time, she asked about the psychological knowledge related to the mysterious field that Estelle talked about last time at the end of the course. Estelle finally considered and said, "Miss Audrey, we have organized a seminar in this field." Crane, relying on the method of divining staff, Klein returned home smoothly, taking advantage of the leisure of taking a bath and summoning himself by himself, and sent the paper Crane together with the master key to the fog. Sitting in the silent and deserted palace, he picked up paper Crane and examined it carefully for a few seconds, but found nothing unusual. Then, Klein took out a pen and paper and wrote the same divination statement as before. Willem Setton's current position. This time, he switched to the dream divination method and was pleasantly surprised to see a picture in the gray and fragmented world. It was a dark room. With the help of a chair, Willem Setton, looking at the scenery outside, was looking at the desk by the window. He grabbed a stack of tarot cards in each hand, with a pile of building blocks beside him. The building blocks spelled out a ring snake end to end. The scene outside the window is equally dark, only vaguely heard the sound of running water. The dream ended quietly here. Klein opened his eyes, tapped the edge of the bronze long table with his fingers, and silently said to himself, "Bite the tail of the snake." It was the snake of Mercury? The Mercury snake, representing fate. There is a sound of running water outside the window, indicating that Will Ansit's current position is close to the Tassoc River. Before I divined that his position overlapped with that of Dr. Allen, was it interfered by fate? Seeing the divination above the fog can only get this level of enlightenment. Klein is no longer troubled by curiosity, but reluctantly interprets it and plans to change Paper Crane back tomorrow night, looking for an opportunity to give directions to Dr. Allen and let him go to the Church of the Goddess of the Night to tell the bishop about it. It's better for the regular army to do this kind of thing. Klein chuckled and returned to the real world. After a leisurely bath, he was not busy anymore and got into bed. I don't know how long it took, but Klein suddenly realized that he was dreaming, reading the secret book in the living room. This familiar feeling. He habitually made a vacant performance and looked at the door. The door creaked open, and a figure in a gray coat came in. He is about 30 years old, with slender cheeks, broad forehead, and dark blue eyes that look quite wise. Not the captain. Klein suddenly laughed at himself, silently spat out a sigh, and turned the secret book into a magazine of ladies' aesthetics. He casually greeted the newcomers as he flipped through the magazine. The man in a gray trench coat took off his hat and sat opposite him, chatting and asking, "Allen called on you this morning?" It was the night watchman, a nightmare. Klein resisted the urge to sigh and smiled and replied, "Yes." He has figured out why the night watchman suddenly falls asleep. The nightmare. In front of me should be a captain of the night watchman squad, who is in charge of the Will and Seton incident, but has not been able to find useful clues. Under such circumstances, Dr. Allen and Detective Shylock Moriarty came to ask about the whereabouts of Will and Seton, which should have been known to them last night or this morning. At the same time, they found that Dr. Allen had just had breakfast and hurried to Minsk Street to visit Detective Shylock Moriarty. In the spirit of professionalism, falling asleep at night is the most normal and natural development, while Dr. Allen is sensitive there, and falling asleep rashly is likely to break the clue, so a detective has undoubtedly become the first choice. What happened to him? The captain of the night watchman's squad asked casually. Klein truthfully replied, "He had a nightmare." Klein described the Dark Tower, the Silver Serpent, and Will and Seton under the protection of layers, and finally said, "Before having this nightmare, Allen went to Will and Seton's house to find the child, because he didn't trust his recovery, because he was troubled by bad luck before. Unfortunately, Will and Seton's family had moved away. However, Allen recalled that the child had given him a paper crane folded by himself and wished him good luck. Maybe stimulated by these two things that he will have such a nightmare." The man in a gray coat showed a surprised expression. "Paper crane?" "Yes." Klein nodded gently. "The child gave it to Allen before leaving the hospital. Allen threw it in the drawer of the office, and then forgot about it until last night." "I see. Thank you for your explanation." The captain of the night watchman squad stood up and gave a polite salute to his chest. The dream suddenly shook like a water wave, and he disappeared directly into the room. Looking at the position where he sat, Klein leisurely speculated on the next development. The night watchman may go to Dr. Allen's tonight to have a dream checkup and take Paper Crane away, so the problem comes. That paper crane was folded by Klein, and the genuine one is above the fog. Well, no matter which paper crane they use, they can't get the answer by divination. It doesn't matter if they change it back. Klein said to himself, keeping his thoughts in check. He continued to sit there, not in a hurry to get out of his dream, lost in thought for a long time. After a while, he cocked his mouth and sighed in a low voice. "I really miss it. P.S. The second watch is coming, and I'm asking for a monthly ticket. Chapter 177. Looking forward to a third more for commutation ticket." On Sunday morning, Klein had just finished breakfast when he heard the expected doorbell. But to his surprise, there were not only reporters Mike Joseph, but also Dr. Allen. "Sherlock, I had that nightmare again last night. I don't think it's normal."
Allen didn't avoid Mike.
As soon as he entered the living room, he said, before Klein answered. He took out his wallet and took out a paper crane. "Do you think it's a problem? Since I found it out and carried it with me, I began to have nightmares." Klein cast a glance carelessly, and his expression suddenly solidified. If he hadn't been a clown and had a strong control over facial muscles, he might even smile in front of reporters and doctors. "Yes," smiled this paper crane is even uglier than mine. This is an idea that Klein produced instantly. At this moment, he has the urge to cover his face and sigh. Is this the tradition of the night watchman in the same strain, and the manual work is relatively poor? There is no doubt that paper crane in front of him is the product of another switch. After getting accurate information from Klein, the night watchman didn't seem to delay. He sneaked into Dr. Allen's bedroom that night and exchanged the one in the wallet with his own paper crane. But what they didn't expect was that the one in the wallet was also fake. Klein folded it on the fog, which was quite rough. Somehow some happy feeling. Klein took a glance at Allen. Doctor without sleep, cleared his throat and said, "Maybe so. I suggest you go to the church again and talk to the previous bishop. We must believe that the gods we believe in are always watching me." While speaking, he drew a triangular emblem on his chest. After the nightmare left last night, Klein specially went to the fog and got a very safe revelation about whether it is dangerous to switch back to paper crane if the divination is not adjusted. Therefore, he can now make such a suggestion with great interest, trying to play a trick on his former colleagues to paper crane, who saw that he was badly folded, returned to his hands, wondering what kind of mood they would have. Klein solemnly relieved Dr. Allen and turned to the reporter and laughed. "Mike, actually, what I want to advise Allen most is to see a psychiatrist, but faith can certainly calm his mind." "You are not frank at all." Mike smiled. "Well, it's time for us to start." The next day, Klein accompanied the reporter of the Daily Observer into the East District to interview the girls who were rescued. In the face of a full £1 interview fee, no one refused, even some girls who had been devastated. In this interview, Capinson is a key point, and the current situation of those girls is another key point. The former makes people angry, and the latter makes people heavy. In fact, Daisy was lucky. She was able to work immediately after returning home, and got food by her own labor. No more than 1/3 of the rescued people like her, and most of them belonged to the kind with some savings at home. Their situation allowed them to be busy for the time being and look for suitable jobs patiently. The other 2/3 of the rescued people have to rush about to survive. In the case of a large number of unemployed textile women workers, they often can only find some temporary jobs with low pay. Those whose parents, brothers, and sisters are not unemployed at home are fine. At least they can help each other and barely fill their stomachs. Those whose family situation is not so optimistic have gradually embarked on the road of street girls. It seems that they have never been rescued. They sell their bodies once, perhaps just for some food. This made Mike as silent as last time, and he didn't return to absolute being until he left the east side when it was dark, thanking Klein. "Sherlock, thanks to your help. Otherwise, I will definitely be blackmailed by those hooligans and gangsters today." "Isn't that why you hired me?" Klein smiled politely without any complacency. With the previous instructions, the old Kohler and Liv's family didn't disclose his free help in finding people, especially Daisy, who was quite clever. When Mike asked them if they knew anyone special, they directly answered, "Mr. Reporter and Mr. Detective." Mike nodded inertia and walked in silence for quite a while. Before boarding the carriage, he suddenly vomited a sigh. "I want to appeal in this report, calling on the government to take out Capin's real estate and set up a rescue fund to help these rescued girls with the annual income and help other people who have been hurt by Capin so that they have a chance to get rid of the current predicament. Although Capin's safe has been ransacked by the Grand Theft Auto, his greatest wealth lies in the real estate he bought. These should all be illegal gains." Klein listened carefully, took a deep look at Mike, and sincerely praised, "You're the best reporter I have ever seen. There are many journalists like me, and there are always some idealists in this world." Mike sighed. With that, he paid Klein £10 for his employment, took off his hat and waved it. "See the reporter on the taxi. Klein is going to another direction to take public transport." At this moment, Mike suddenly opened the window, teasing smile to ask, "Sherlock, I'm not the only reporter you know, am I?" Klein paused. "Haha," laughed. "You guess." The city of Silver. Derek Berg is like a beast trapped indoors, pacing back and forth in the room with a little anxiety. He felt that the chief did not pay enough attention to his report, and worried that those members of the exploration team who had not been influenced by the fallen creator would cause devastating damage to the city that had lasted for 2,582 years in the dark after the isolation was lifted. Under such circumstances, he is eager to get opinions, and get the opinions of Mr. Upside Down and Miss Justice, who know the fallen creator quite well. This is the tarot party he is most looking forward to. Wait a little longer. Wait a little longer. If Mr. Fool doesn't call, I will pray to him directly. Dirk tried to calm himself down, but the pace of circling did not slow down at all. Suddenly, he saw the boundless fog and heard the voice like a savior. Get ready for the party. Dirk snapped a sigh of relief, sat down on the edge of the bed cautiously, and lay down, pretending that he was going to sleep for a while because of fatigue. After silently counting the slightly rapid 1,000 heartbeats, he waited for a while before being swallowed up by the illusory crimson light. At this moment, Dirk's room was unusually quiet, and lightning flashed across the sky one after another outside the window, keeping the darkness away from this land. Suddenly, in the corner of his bedside, Black crawled and stretched, turning into a human form. The shadow climbed rapidly, quietly overlooking Dirk. He observed it carefully for dozens of seconds, and then shrank back without any gains. In the corner, the shadow is as usual, without change. Endless gray fog, as always, pervades the feet, and the long bronze table in front of it is mottled with rusty green but not decayed. Dirk, the son, first saw Miss Justice and Miss Magician sitting opposite him, and the familiar and brisk greetings came to his ears. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool." "Good afternoon." Klein, shrouded in the fog, nodded gently, seemingly leisurely responding to the greetings from Miss Justice and other members, but actually busy manipulating the world and making him behave like a real person. Yesterday, after an interview with Mike, it was dinner time. Klein found a Nepote-style restaurant outside and was so spicy that he asked for a cup of desert beer after eating and drinking enough to go home. He didn't go out again or studied the secret book or prepared his own food, which relieved a lot of the heavy emotions that would arise every time he went to the East District. Unconsciously, when the afternoon came, he turned his mind to the tarot party. After greeting Justice, Audrey endured her curiosity and excitement and didn't rush to ask, what was the truth behind the capping incident? Mr. Fool may not answer, but how can you know if he wants to answer without asking? Well, I hope he will make an equivalent request, and I will try my best to meet it. Audrey looks around and observes the status of other members. As a mind reader, she soon found some anomalies. Hey, Sun is very anxious. Did something happen to the former captain of the exploration team? Metamon. Also, Fowles is in a state of wanting to ask but afraid to ask. She should have seen the newspaper and guessed from the tarot cards that Capping's death was what our tarot would do, but she wondered who the Emperor card represented. She seemed to be more in awe of Mr. Fool. What happened, Mr. Upside Down is in a good mood. His potions have been digested. He seems to be expecting something, Mr. World is still gloomy and introverted, and it is difficult to read his current thoughts. It is really the nemesis of the audience approach. Dirk, the son, didn't hide his anxiety, but he didn't directly consult the members of the Tarot Club. He knows very well that the opening period belongs to Mr. Fool, unless there is no such thing as Russell's diary. There is no need to worry. The party has already started. If Mr. Fool is in a good mood, he may answer some questions. Dirk comforted himself, hanging upside down Alger. Looking up, humbly said, Dear Mr. Fool, I have collected 3 new pages of Roselle's diary. Diary? Roselle's diary? Falls, the magician, pricked up his ears. Klein's smile replied, What do you want to exchange them for? Looked at Mr. Fool, hand covered with a card. Upside down, Alger repressed, full of eager way. I want to know what the card next to you is. Chapter 178 The Great Navigator Russell. A monthly ticket, I know this. Audrey. Justice, with her eyes half-turned and her chin slightly raised, happily turned her eyes to the oblique front and turned to a pillar supporting the dome. She quickly withdrew her eyes, ready to appreciate the reaction of Mr. Upside Down after hearing the answer. Magician Forsey vaguely understood one thing. With the so-called Roselle diary, you can get answers to some questions from Mr. Fool, and maybe even exchange items. Roselle diary? Are those notes written by Russell with unique symbols that others can't understand at all? They are diaries? The tone of Upside Down is very certain, but Mr. Fool did not refute. I met a lot of them, but I didn't buy them because I wasn't interested. Oh, yes, Miss Audrey has many. She is a fanatic in this field. But her dog last week, no. Maybe last week, I don't remember clearly. In short, it chewed up many books and notes, including all the diaries of Russell the Great. The sudden surprise and subsequent disappointment filled Fal's mind and made her want to raise her hands, cover her ears, and scream loudly. Not like this is not enough to express her feelings at this time. I hate dogs. Magician, Voss thought bitterly. The requirement of hanging upside down is quite beyond Klein's expectation, but for him, it belongs to the easiest kind. So he smiled a track. Yes, do you want everyone to hear it? Or just yourself? Upside down, Alger replied without hesitation. I only know it myself. He has no spirit of selfless dedication. Klein's smile shielded the senses of the other members, which made Miss Justice very wronged. She was waiting to see the stunned and shocked expression of Mr. Hanging Upside Down, as if she had done something amazing. Although she wouldn't take the initiative to publicize it, she was looking forward to the reaction of others. But now, the hateful Hanging Upside Down has deprived me of this happiness. Audrey muttered something in her mind, and of course, she knows very well that the other party's request is absolutely justified. But I already know the answer. She thought at this point. Klein leisurely flipped the blasphemy card and stood it up, so that the upside-down man could directly see Roselle wearing black armor, crown and cloak. The portrait of the emperor can often be seen. Alger, the upside-down man, is no stranger, and he was immediately recognized. More importantly, there are bright signs on the cards. Sequence 0, Black Emperor. Sure enough, it's the rumored deck of cards made by Russell the Great, which hides the way of God. It's the so-called tarot prototype. Sequence 0, Black Emperor. This one corresponds to the path of lawyer. Mr. Fool has been collecting Roselle's diary, apparently in order to find clues about the deck of cards from it, and in just a few months, he has already got one. Alger was pleasantly surprised, excited. Between Horan, he somehow felt that the prospect of the Tarot Club was extremely bright. Before, he was only awed by the mystery and power of Mr. Fool and only held the purpose of exchanging information and articles with his so-called Tarot Club. But now, he began to think about the benefits that he and other members could get after Mr. Fool collected all the cards of Roselle the Great. At that time, the Tarot Club may become the most powerful secret organization. Alger can't help looking forward to the future. At this time, Klein leisurely said one. Blasphemy card. He immediately lifted the shield. As soon as she regained her senses, Justice. Audrey immediately turned her attention to Hanging Upside Down and vaguely read the remaining shock, joy, and yearning of the other party through the blurred image. That's it. Audrey immediately got great satisfaction. The blasphemy card was related to Blasphemy Slate. Alger, the upside-down man, bowed his head and pondered for a few seconds and began to have a new 3-page Roselle diary. Soon, the 3 yellow-brown parchments came to Klein's hands. He looked down at random and read slowly. On March 15th, I was the protagonist. With only some archaeological clues and folk rumors, I found a ghost ship left by Solomon Empire near the Orodek Islands on the edge of the Foggy Sea, the ancient Black Throne. It's really cool. There are some ancient books on it, including a treasure map pointing to an unknown island, which was the last settlement of Big Noble, a Solomon Empire who retreated from the northern mainland, and everything he left behind was there. This treasure will surely belong to me. On March 19th, after repeated consideration and measurement, I finally decided to go to sea for a voyage. After that, I will enter the Royal Army as an officer, and it is difficult to have such an opportunity again. Edwards and Green are willing to follow me to take risks in that foggy ocean. In fact, I'm not just for the treasure. I also want to verify a problem. From the sun to the red crescent, from the trajectory of the stars in the sky to the alternation of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, all kinds of signs and different data prove that the world I live in should be a planet. In this case, it shouldn't be just the North and South continents. Inferred from all kinds of data, the area occupied by the North and South continents is less than 10% of this planet. Are other places just oceans? North China is the Misty Sea to the west and the Suniya Sea to the east. I suspect that there are other continents at the end of these two oceans, just like the southern continent at the end of the Violent Sea. Maybe I can find a brand new continent, the Western continent. Let's go. Great navigator Rosell Columbus Magellan Gustav, and test your guess. When the emperor was young, he was really headstrong. He dared to sail out to sea just because he didn't know whether it was true or not, and he didn't know what dangerous treasure map was hidden. No, after he was old, he was just as headstrong. The blasphemy card was evidence. Klein couldn't help but condescend. This page of diary seems to be related to the one he has seen before, and there are at most one or two other diaries in the middle. Therefore, Klein is roughly sure that Rosell got lost in this voyage and found a primitive island outside the safe channel with many extraordinary creatures on it. In the process, he also played tricks on Green and Edwards, who followed him to sea with the stocks of For Horsemen of the Apocalypse and One Piece. In addition, Green, who was praised by Rosell as the smartest person among us, became more and more strange after discovering the original island, and finally died in the foggy sea. Speaking, the view that the world is a planet has now been widely recognized and confirmed by astronomy. Klein turned to the second page of the diary. On April 18th, I found the term West China in the ancient books of the Black Throne. There really is the West China. But even in the Quaternary in the Solomon Empire, when the gods were still walking on the earth, the West China was only a rumor, which was said to be the hometown of the elves, involving the ancient god named Su-Nasso Liam. But the problem is that the elves were finally trapped in Sunia Island and then scattered on various islands above the mountains and the sea. There was never a legend that they tried to return to their hometown. In short, there may be the West China at the end of the Misty Sea, and there is the hometown of elves. What about the end of the Sunia Sea? Is there really an East China? What phrases is it hidden in the fairy tales? Is it an illusory land abandoned by God? Go on, Rosell. You're almost there. The Western continent, the Eastern continent. Rosell guessed that the latter might be a land abandoned by God. By the way, Mr. Dongdiao Man once said that many members of the Aurora Society were looking for the sanctuary of the true creator on the Sunia Sea, and he suspected that the sanctuary was a land abandoned by God. This is somewhat close to the idea of Rosell the Great. There are many secrets in this world. On April 20th, there were indications that we were about to arrive at a land, not an island land. Get lost and this benefit? Will I find the so-called Western continent? On April 21st, I saw the abyss. Abyss. Rosell saw the abyss. Is it an abyss in the sense of mysticism? Klein pupil miniature quickly turned the page, but the diary on the third page shows that he doubts life and his years of Chinese education. The above is full of the following statements. Arihu is hungry and invited to the mansion. This. Klein understood. This page should be a forged Rosell diary by later generations. They pieced together a bunch of sentences by themselves according to the original symbols. At this moment, Klein seemed to see the garbled code, and he had the urge to curse those counterfeiters. He wanted to make sure that the abyss mentioned in Rosell's diary was the abyss pointed by such nouns as the source of all evil, the land of depravity, and the devil's residence. The abyss, in the true sense, is the dark side of the universe, where gods will be corroded. It should be as independent from the real world as the spirit world. At least, the Book of Secrets and the ancient books I came into contact with in the Night Watchman Squad are recorded in this way. If it is not a real abyss, what does the Emperor mean by the abyss? Klein's repeated thinking can't be explained, and his heart is extremely uncomfortable, just like the eunuch who has been chasing more at the most critical time. At a glance, he calmed down and let the diary disappear in his hand. You can start. Sitting at the top of the bronze long table, he gave a light smile. Upside down, Alger immediately side-head, looked at the sun. Don't care about miraculously asked, Did you get anything from the former captain of the exploration team? P.S. During the double period, it will be wasted if the monthly ticket is not cast. Chapter 179. Listen to the little sun, telling stories from monthly ticket. Son, Dyrek was in a hurry to ask about the fallen creator, but after hearing the question of hanging people upside down, he honestly replied, He's dead. Is he dead? Justice, hanging upside down, and Magician expressed their surprise at the same time. They really didn't expect this turning point. After all, the former captain of the exploration team has been locked up for decades, and there has been no problem. Who would have thought that after discussing his affairs, he died at this moment? Except for Mr. Fool, only the gloomy and restrained world has maintained its original state. Son Direk ordered his head to say. Well, after I returned to Bayin City, I originally wanted to ask more things from the former captain of the exploration team according to the suggestion of Mr. Hanging Man. As a result, he suddenly appeared behind me and asked if I was looking for him. Hearing this, Justice, Audrey suddenly took a small breath. Although Sun obviously doesn't have the ability to tell a good story, the simple description of the other party still gives her a feeling of watching horror late at night. It seems that there is also a person standing behind her and asking, "Are you looking for me?" Fowles, the magician, was afraid and excited, just like when he was a child listening to his mother telling ghost stories. He had covered his ears in fear, but he was still possessed by someone and opened his fingers wide so that the sound could be transmitted to his mind. This bridge can be written in the book. As a best-selling writer, she has excellent professional instinct. Hanging upside down, Alger informed, subconsciously asked, "You Silver City, for out-of-control dungeon, no seal? There is no barrier between each other? I remember you said last time that there is a very powerful and magical object as the core." "Yes, but I don't know why he came to my room, and he was completely out of control. His head split from the middle, and there were many cracks on his body. Each crack was a mouth." Son Direk casually described the scene at that time. "Then how did you survive? How did it escape from him?" "No, it escaped." Magician Fowles has the feeling of being there, which is also the concern of Justice, Audrey. Upside down, Alger's reaction is very different with them, thoughtfully whispered. "It's not logical to put you next door to such a dangerous guy who is only out of control. It seems that the top of your Silver City, the members of the 6-member panel, are consciously contacting that guy to see if they can get more useful information from him and observe his corresponding changes. So, which elder saved you?" Direk's mouth opened a little, only to feel that Mr. Upside Down seemed to see and hear what happened at that time. He can guess the truth only from what I described. "How amazing!" The son Direk admirably replied. "Yes, as you said, the chief appeared in time and used that magical item to solve the out-of-control person." Aware of the respect and admiration of the son, Upside Down, Alger chuckled. "This is an obvious thing. As long as you have enough knowledge, you can easily see it. I didn't think." Justice, Audrey slightly depressed himself that I didn't see. "Magic," Fowles brushed his hair in shame, "that I didn't think that way." "The world," repeated Mr. Fool's side. "Speaking of which," Algerway frowned and asked slowly, "You said you had just returned before long, and the former captain of the exploration team was out of control? He hasn't lost control in the past few decades, but suddenly he lost control after your return?" At the same time of asking questions, the upside-down man looked up at Mr. Fool and saw that he was calm and carefree, without the slightest abnormality, and his mood stabilized in an instant, and all the uneasiness that had just emerged turned into doubts. The Mon family is known as blasphemers. Did that man discover the Tarot Club and the secret above the fog? But it was easily solved by Mr. Fool? The son Direk seriously nods. "I guess 2 reasons. One is that I chose the Sun Way, and you said that the Amon family was descended from the ancient sun god. The other is that he noticed that Mr. Fool was dragging me to the party, so there was some change, which finally proved to be the latter." "How is it confirmed?" Hanging upside down, Alger asked without leaving any gaps. "Did anyone notice that Mr. Fool dragged people to the party? Can anyone really notice? Terrible. Not the Kuei is a blasphemer." Justice, Audrey was surprised and shocked. She couldn't help looking at the bronze long table for the first time and was immediately calmed by the calm and indifferent attitude of Mr. Fool. "It's just a small matter." For Mr. Fool, "It's just a small matter." Audrey thought with joy and relief that it turns out that someone can find the convening of the Tarot Club. Sure enough, There are so many ways and so many sequences, and there is always an extraordinary ability to deal with this matter. But for me now, this is a very bad thing. I am still too weak, and I must improve the sequence as soon as possible. Magician Fowles was surprised and scared at the moment. Son Direk truthfully described, "When the out-of-control person was solved by the chief, I saw the shadow of Amon. It should be him. He looks like this." After asking for the consent of Mr. Fool, Direk revealed a light curtain depicting the image of Amon. Black classical robe, soft hat with the same color spire, monocle made of crystal, wide forehead, thin face, black eyes and black curly hair. "Have you seen him?" Son Direk asked hopefully, hanging upside down. Justice, Magician, and the world shook their heads at the same time. Direk, no longer entangled in this matter, continued. Amon's shadow was also wiped out by the chief with the help of magical items, leaving a translucent bug. Chief told me that it was just a member of Amon. He explained a reason why he arranged for me to live next door before. After confirming that I had no problem, he let me go home by myself. I was a little scared. I didn't know what follow-up actions Amon would take, so I just got home and began to pray to Mr. Fool. Wait a minute. Hanging upside down, Alger frowned and interrupted the words of the son. You said that you had just experienced such a strange and terrible thing and were put home by the chief. And you just got home and started praying to Mr. Fool without doing anything else? Yes. The son, Direk answered slightly blankly. And what's wrong with this? He thinks that Mr. Upside Down has a rather strange attitude. Justice, Audrey vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the treatment of the son, but she didn't figure out what was wrong in a short time. She just believed that she wouldn't do it if she were herself, and at this moment, Magician Fowles had covered her own face, too careless. I used to be like this, at the cost of using the stones on the bracelet and starting to bear the curse of the full moon. The best-selling writer sighed in his heart. Alger, the upside-down man, took a look at Mr. Fool again. Seeing that he still had nothing to say, he reluctantly relaxed and made a fist to reach the next mouth and nose. You have an intersection with that weird Amon. Do you think the chief just checks it again and will be completely at ease with you? If that's the case, the former exploration team leader will not be locked in a dungeon for 42 years. In my experience, the chief must send someone to monitor you in the dark, and you have undoubtedly exposed your own special features. Don't doubt this.